Yo, what's up? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to another storytime banger. Here we're talking about my first time going into the third plateau on DXM, and also my first encounter with a DXM entity, one I've come to name as Dexter. And this story takes place around 6 years back now. It happened about a week after one of my last stories, the story of sea flipping with LSA and MDMA, which I do recommend you check this story out, and other stories from the playlist we have. Chapter 1, Beginnings of a Psychonaut. This is where my journey starts with substances and where things are more chronological, and does explain better where my state was with this story. It isn't necessary, but my past DXM trips are definitely worth a listen for context and my attitude towards it up to this point. And I am currently working on designing a timeline and a sort of glossary for all the content, just so we all have a better idea of the flow of events, and all the things we covered thus far. But for today, we're here to talk about the third plateau and my first time in it. During this period, I had a lot of uncertainty hanging over my head. With court dates and drug testing coming up, I wasn't sure how my life was going to be. And I don't think I would have necessarily had these types of experiences during this time if I was simply able to smoke. Because a big thing this night was just to get baked as ever with some close homies. But I wasn't able to do this because I didn't want to fail my drug test coming out that month. So instead, I decided to take some more DXM to hold me over, since it had been a little while now at this point. It was like 2 or 3 weeks since my last DXM trip. But that's the basic gist of why I even tripped this night. DXM was just a good convenient option at the time. This was easily one of my most powerful trips yet, possibly being the strongest DXM trip yet. But I don't think I would put it past the time we combined DXM and LSA. Maybe about equal in association. That was the second plateau, but the physical power of that trip has really been unmatched for me, besides some more future DXM trips that is, and a couple other things. And another big story that set my mood for like the next 3 or 4 months was the time I went to jail. I won't go into the details with that here, there's a whole video on it, but not only did it influence my choices for this night, but it also did play a big role in the trip as well, and what I got from it. I was really able to see and feel the ignorance of what the system put me through full on in a whole different light. It definitely had a strong impact for my life at the time. I'll explain this more later on in. But anyways, I've been hanging with the homie Marcel a good amount. Marcel's been in a ton of stories now, and expect him to be in a ton more. Evan though, was my drug partner at the time, which we hung out a decent amount, meeting up on our bikes and whatnot, going on rides and walks. But as much as it sucks, we wouldn't hang out as much because of my drug testing. Evan was simply a stoner, guys. He was the guy who got me to smoke like this at all. If it wasn't for him, I may not even have a smoke sesh series, or even this channel honestly. Who really knows? But of course he wanted to smoke with me, and I just couldn't. He didn't want to tell me like that or anything either, so I get it. Still though, we hung out being friends, but it just wasn't a daily thing where we had our sesh. But this side of the story, Evan wasn't around. I'm pretty sure he went to a family party. I know he would have been down to smoke. Instead it would be Marcel and the gang. One dude I want to mention right now, who's been a big role in my life at points, and will be in many future stories, is the homie Leo. Leo and I would actually go to college together the following year, and this story here I'm pretty sure partially planted that seed to sprout. Just the way he talked about it, and the things he brought up, really did inspire me in ways. But Leo came up before in the story of Marcel's graduation party. Little did I know at the time, would this dude become one of my close friends. Anyways, this all happened on a Saturday and was kinda spontaneous. I was doing me, focusing in on certain things beforehand. If you don't know, I used to make reviews before this channel, and I had dropped an album review on Marilyn Monroe's latest project, which I dropped it at like 7 AM. The rest of the day I was at the crib just on my grind. Later that day, I made a snap post around 5:30, what's the move? I hadn't done or gone out or anything like that whole week, so I just naturally wanted to hang with some homies and do something. I had nothing planned though, but Marcel hits me up. Marcel is one of my best friends, and he's been in a ton of stories. He told me about this edible experience that he had recently, and just how fried he got. Marcel was really new to the whole experience of cannabis at the time. Like, I remember when I first picked up, he was kinda shocked, because we weren't just those kinds of people as kids growing up. Or at least he wasn't around too much, and I didn't really embrace any of it when I was with him. I told him at a young age of my interest in psychedelics though. especially that of ayahuasca and DMT. I just don't think he expected cannabis to be so present the way it came to be. And with how we knew these stoners growing up, he was acting all concerned about it first. It's actually kind of funny thinking back. Like, damn bro, chill, just smoking out here. Which for me, that's such a normal occurrence now. But it's really the fact of how it can be a gateway drug, and how we were just so new to everything still. But given time, of course, Marcel got curious, seeing how much I enjoyed it. And I'm going to tell a little pre-story here before the actual story. Basically just to tell you guys how Marcel got into it, and just to add some more context to this. So another homie I haven't brought up in a long ass time is the homie Jordan. Jordan is a childhood friend, and we were all cool with each other. Jordan had been smoking for a while up to this point, and I can just tell he had been waiting a long ass time for both Marcel and I to smoke with him. I had already smoked a couple times now at this point with Jordan, but I knew he wanted that group sesh, especially since Marcel told us about him taking those edibles. Which, speaking of these, I honestly think they were just fucking CBD gummies, which still though at the time, those weren't that common, but wasn't anything to get him blazed. I remember Marcel told us he got him in hopes that it would, and that was just enough right there. Jordan heard he had an interest and had been wanting to capitalize on it, and he had just been asking him, just like, when are we smoking? And fucking Marcel was all like worried about it, that his mom's gonna find out and all this dumb shit. He just wanted the perfect situation. But one day finally rolls around where his mom was gonna be out for the rest of the night, and Jordan and I were chilling with my brother. My brother at the time had weed and coke, some gas stuff, and when I told Jordan about Marcel, we all jumped in and hit him up. We got on a call, and at first he was like, I'm not smoking, like right away too. Jordan, I already know why you're calling, and I'm not smoking. But we just told him we wanted to hang out. Of course Jordan still had the same intentions though, and when we got together, we went for a ride, and basically just started smoking. I didn't really say much, Jordan was doing all the talking and convincing. My brother just sparked it, and we proceeded to smoke, which we boxed this smug too in Jordan's car. So eventually, Marcel took some hits. I think my influence played a big role. Also my brother's and just the moment we were in. But he was like pissed the whole time at Jordan, which I won't really focus on that part too heavily. Regardless, I remember us getting absolutely blazed this day. We went back to Marcel's crib and were stoned as fuck, smashed a bunch of snacks, and think we just chatted it up. Then somehow Jordan got my brother to sell this quad for like $20 off. Like it took a whole fat ass minute of persuasion and shit, but my brother just said fuck it. Anyways, that's just a little side story that kinda sets this up. Because not long after, Marcel was hitting me up saying when are we gonna smoke again. He liked the experience, just wanted it to be more chill and not so forced. And I'm pretty sure this happened right after my first drug test, so I had some time before the next. But let's get into this story of this night. So since Marcel had that interest, we wanted to point out a night where we could chief. I was low-key salty as fuck because I knew I couldn't smoke. It would be stupid as fuck to smoke with my drug test being a week or two away from this day. So I thought, man, I still want to get high and have an experience with everyone. So let me do some research and take something that won't come up in a drug test. I didn't want to risk it with something new at the time, so I decided, let me do something I've enjoyed well thus far, and that was DXM. I won't speak on my pastimes heavily here, but in terms of strength and effect, it's easily been one of the most powerful substances we had yet. Evan and I did it like 3 or 4 times before this, and it really gave me the notion that I really fuck with the dissociative experience, and wanted to explore it more. I was hoping to get Evan involved this night, but he would be busy. It was sorta last minute anyways. We talked about doing this, but Marcel set it up out of nowhere. I told Marcel about my concern with smoking, and we would go out and grab some DXM this night. I knew I wanted to do it with some homies, possibly introduce it to one of them. I really wanted Marcel to try it and get his opinion on the experience, because especially after this, I could just see how great this could be for bonding and group trips. But Marcel wouldn't want to. It was just too much of a jump for him yet, and he mainly wanted to get stoned. There's always going to be some uncertainty with something new like that. With us this night will be Marcel's sister and her friend, which I believe I brought them up before briefly, his sister Kate, and her friend Jody. But anyways, I remember going into this night being pretty chill about everything. Marcel and I hung out for a bit, just chilling. His sister and his mom were there when I got there, but his mom left in a little. I will admit it was a bit soon since my last experience, just a week after my one MDMA experience with LSA. I would have spaced them out more, and I would have liked to simply smoke, but we had the drug testing bullshit. Eventually after their mom left, we went to Kate's car and picked up the Robocall from Walgreens, which Kate's friend Jody was with us at this point and was like all worried I was gonna overdose or some shit. She really had no idea what it was and just thought we were trying to overdose looking for a high randomly. It was just a fear of ignorance, which I never lead with. I had been doing tons of research on DXM before. It was a top 3 substance for me at the time, probably number 1 for a good while to tell the truth. And this journey into the third plateau felt like just the experience I needed and wanted. The third plat just felt like that next natural step for me, seeing how much I loved the second. I just had to know where this substance could go, so of course I had to cop 2 bottles of Robocoff. But we hung out for a while in the car after we got back, and this is where I dosed the 600 milligrams. I tried to wait a bit, not too sure why, but the excitement took over. Jody was concerned, but Marcel knew I was straight, and of course so do I. So we were chilling. I will say though, this substance, especially at this dose, is not for everyone, and it's probably lucky I didn't get any bad side effects. But I dosed it easily like it was nothing, and now we were just waiting for the homie Leo, as he was going to be showing up with some bud. Apparently he wasn't going to be that long, but he ended up dragging. But I remember slowly coming up in the car as we waited. I got a slight change in perception, and I remember just staring outside at his garage and this lamppost. And I wouldn't say things got smaller or bigger, they did in ways from different angles and moments. But mainly it was like a slight hue diffusion was placed in my visual perception. I didn't say much as this set in. And Kate mentioned wanting to go inside till Leo got there. So we went back inside, and this is where I really noticed a change and brought it up to Marcel. I really just couldn't help but smile, because it was like fuck all these assholes, man. Fuck the haters. And this is kind of a big theme for my trip that will fuel my spirit. I got the notion right away this was something I was meant to be doing. Not only that, but everything that happened I was meant to go through, and meant to experience up close for a reason, especially concerning my recent visit in jail. It was psychedelic in a way, but more so psychotic and personal. I did like the fact that I seemed to be in a group of users that enjoys DXM, presumably a third of users, while another third of users are indifferent and the other third hate it. And these feelings envelop into feelings of empathy and playfulness, a feeling of being awakened, and free of the shackles of being stuck to what society can set up for us at times. This is what I felt. It was like coming home after a long time. And with this, I brushed up with my first encounter with a kind of DXM entity, one I coined the name of Dexter spontaneously during my trip. It came so natural to me. Like, this entity has always been, and it's like the god of the dextromethorphan universe, our realm. And Dexter would immerse me in the red mental tides of Robitussin, which is a mess, but a beautiful mess at that. The kind of beautiful mess to fit my messy situation. One that channeled my inner being into clarity. It was very empowering. These feelings and this kind of theme dominated a lot of my internal headspace and feeling for a majority of the trip, along with an array of dissociative euphoric effects. Anyways, we go inside, and I just start describing a lot of it to Marcel. For him it sounded unbelievable that this could happen, all from cough suppressant from the corner store. But really it just felt like this blessing at the time. I remember getting feelings that for whatever reason, we ended up in this universe where this over-the-counter can cause these tripping experiences, just so we can embody and experience this kind of energy. Like it was some kind of hidden Easter egg or something, and I came across it and was having this super spiritual empowering reaction because it was meant for me and others like me. I mentioned before, but Evan wasn't the most fond of DXM, just alright with it, especially after the last trip. But for me it was so much love, and more. But Marcel would end up somewhat matching my energy this night. It's kind of crazy thinking back. How did my tripping state have a role on others at the time? I feel like I for sure had an influence bringing Marcel into some kind of energy. Beyond him smoking, that is. But anyways, let's just jump forward a little bit to when Leo comes through, which was like an hour from when I started to have these feelings. Leo pulls up after these guys are all antsy. Marcel especially seeing how gone I was already with my trip. And I really just noticed some things once I was in the car again. Shadows seemed a lot more pronounced, and things began to distort in ways, depending on what I was looking at. I started feeling like an ant almost at times, or like a small dog seeing how giant everything was, especially his garage. And we were sitting in the car for a good 10 minutes or so, which for me of course felt more like a half hour. The whole trip honestly felt like a whole day or more for me. But I guess this dude Leo made us stop somewhere else like right before, and basically delayed everything by like 20 minutes. And I remember they got out the car once or twice, impatient, where I at the time really was just zoned into my trip, and consciously tried to see if I could get any closed-eye visuals. And I did right away, very actively, and it wasn't anything too heavily defined that stuck out to me or gave me very much meaning in all honesty. I can best describe it as an array of neon lights amongst my dark eyelids performing this sort of light show. I remember Marcel asked me at one point what the visuals were, and it was all this kind of stuff moving and morphing in a pretty fast fashion. For example, I would see like these unicorns explode into fireworks for it to form into a moving road into a city, which would then transform into something like a Pac-Man in this ominous glow of excitement and peace. Really, I didn't feel connected with what I saw in any way with this trip. Other trips, yes, but because of the lack of connections and depth, I didn't do this long. And those are just a few examples, honestly, of probably hundreds of different images that I saw behind closed eyes. If I could draw good, it's something I could put on paper. It wasn't necessarily geometric, kind of like jagged lines, but very smooth in its nature and flow, and not too complex by any means. I would come back to this at different moments throughout the night. Eventually, Leo finally shows up. We talk it up, and everyone gets in the whip. Leo rolls up a blunt with the weed he had got. I'm pretty sure this strain was lemon skunk, and I have to admit, this did take some willpower to resist. Even with the DXM, I still wish I could simply smoke and enjoy that high. But again, the DXM also did keep me in check in a way, reminding me of my predicament and how I was straight in the end. It was probably easier than if I was sober. There was still this dope-ass trip unfolding, and it really felt fun and at peace in a sense to be with my friends this night. I would still be in the car when we smoked, and I remember everyone besides me in that car got fried. I mean, everyone's eyes were just cooked. And we had some odd trippy moments that happened. Like out of nowhere, everyone got quiet, right? And we would all listen into the smallest songs, for whatever reason. And then someone would break it with a small laugh or the small call, and we would all bust out laughing. It's so bizarre looking back at this now. I think the girls may have brought it on with what they were talking about or something, but really it was just like we were all connected and had this weird group interaction going on. And it really gave me the notion that DXM can be on some tribal ass shit, and honestly can be a blast if done in a group in the right setting. Granted though, not everyone reacts the same or always has a good time with DXM, but I found it reminded me of how MDMA can feel, and the level of trippiness this night will be on par with that of my acid trips. Anyways, we had some highest moments in the car, lots of laughs, and in general, we were all enjoying ourselves. I will note things also did feel a bit surreal, and I got a significant amount of dissociation during this, which in a way added to all of our amusements, because I could really get silly. But in terms of visual psychoactive effects, I can compare it to that classic dissociative image of seeing yourself in your head, like you're watching a movie of yourself or something of that nature. Like I specifically remember seeing myself in the car with everyone, while at the same time I was looking out the window dissociated as ever, staring into a streetlight just to come back to everyone laughing after we broke our group silence like nothing happened. Which I feel like this is what can make it so bizarre for some people on the outside. It's like, how could you go through all this stuff and then act so natural like none of it's going on? But I remember how cool I thought it was, how unreal it seemed to be experiencing it. Like, I remember reading about it, but to actually be going through it myself, simply incredible. It really just began to set the stage for my interest, what I saw I wanted to do in my future in ways. and I wanted to share this with everyone, but at the same time, didn't want Jody to start tripping or judging me on some ignorant ass shit. And I remember I just got all these ideas that I had to get everyone on the DXM with me, which honestly, this is some kind of pipe dream, at least with my friend group, because I really didn't understand how unwilling some people are when it comes to trying to get high off an over the counter. Again, DXM this night has been so beautiful and great, but it isn't perfect or great in general by any means. But I just kept having thoughts to myself and saved it for later. Saved it for mainly this story, I suppose, really. The universe had in store for me a lot unknown, and I was just glad to be in such a blissful state exploring this new territory. But anyways, after a little while being high in the car, everyone decided to get out and we would do some things while high. Leo said he would roll up another one or two, I believe, so they were stoned for a good portion of this night, especially since they had like no tolerance. But we went inside, and I remember Kate was bringing up to me how we should do a puzzle. She did bring it up before, I think, and to me this sounded cool as fuck to try out, and it really sparked some idea of what eventually turned into the Let's Dive In series. If you don't know, this series we have a bunch of different tests with a bunch of different substances. But I said fuck it, sounds like it would be a fun challenge. And at the time I remember, I just blurted out we had to play Tame Impala. And I don't know if I mentioned it in my 1P LSD trip, but that Currents album had just recently came out at the time, and it really played a huge role in the start of my tripping experiences. Especially these two big ones, Let It Happen, and The Less I Know the Better. I would be vibing hard as a mud to these, and would get so much euphoria out of these songs. This would actually change with time, but that'll be for a future video. This night, especially with the DXM man, it's just nuts on the euphoria. And it was funny as fuck to me at the time, because I started to get so dissociated in ways I hadn't before. And this was by far one of the strongest times yet it had an impact on my voice production. Basically, it can make you talk with these weird ass slurs at times, mainly with higher doses, which I haven't gotten this at all from ketamine. And it isn't like alcohol slurs, it's almost like someone tweaked your brain or vocal cords in this whack direction, and you can't produce specific sounds or move your mouth in a certain way at certain times, or it would just be difficult as hell to do, and it could cause you to speak at different speeds, like all slow at one moment, then just really quick the next. And I remember everyone laughing and just noticing how messed up it was making me, but at the same time, so much energy and being so fun. Which I thought it was pretty dope at the time, just being so gone in this state and having my voice being the way it was. It added to the trippiness and immersion. But I was just like, Tame Impala, Tame Impala, Tame Impala, like just some nut, man. So Marcel put on the Currents album, of course, and I remember us just getting so lost into Let It Happen. We all had some level of time distortion with it. I had especially feeling like the song was like a half hour, if not longer. I knew the song well, but Marcel asked if it was the same song like 3 different times. The song itself and the vibe it brings up is just a trip in itself. And if you listen, make sure it's the album version. And I can only begin to describe how this made me feel on the inside. Specifically, my heart and my mind. Like us just vibing in Marcel's crib, listening to Tame Impala together, everyone's high as fuck in some way, we're starting to get into this puzzle. It was just a great time. And the sense of togetherness, the sense of appreciation for my life at this moment, the sense of love, it was really like nothing I'd ever felt before. And this is why DXM has been one of my top substances. No other substance really does this in this way. Maybe MDMA. But this trip itself is just so unique and offers so many different effects, with so many different ways it can play out. And it was pure beauty and love for me this night, and togetherness and nurture. I didn't recognize it at first, not till later when we were calming down, but I was in a deep state of DXM, a new state of energy, and I really felt like I let myself into all of it, completely subjected with no holding back. And you can call this just energy, you can call this just a perception, you can call this an entity if you want, but I won't be definite with the terms I use here to describe what Dexter is and how he presented everything this night. You could say Dexter's the entire experience itself. I think I will say for sure though, Dexter is a type of present, one not simply seen with your eyes, but by tapping into what lies across dimensional planes and whatnot. Dexter feels like a god of some sort, one keeping a balance of sorts, and one who selected me to be a Dexter for some time. It's a relationship of sorts, a communication of sorts, to fulfill a deeper purpose, I feel. I will say though that in future experiences, more fully embodied entities have popped up, and this trip just scratches the surface of Dexter for me. It was simply an introduction and a form of care for what happened, but also there to remind me and prepare me for why I'm here. And just this wave of soothing euphoria occurred pretty much the whole night. There were odd goofy moments sprinkled throughout, but this really just added to the healing in ways, because I'll take a bit of goofiness over a shitty situation all day. Everything happens for a reason, and I was just filled with so much happiness and joy at the time. I choose to trust in the universe, trust that it will treat us right if we treat it right, and vice versa. Which in that case, we must do our duties. At this time though, it was a balancing of empathy, care, and understanding. Again, a huge reason why DXM has been one of my top substances. Anyways, enough on those feelings. Basically, Kate pretty much did the puzzle mostly, as I was helpless like a 4-year-old when it came trying to do it. But after a bit, we ended up going outside to hang out as it was nice out. We brought out a speaker and just were vibing talking to each other. I remember taking some pictures and videos, which Marcel's ass was fried to the gills. With that laugh, just telling that you're stoned as fuck. Leo was baked too, and we listened to Tame Impala heavy. I remember the night sky looked pretty cool, and gained some of that perspective. But in a sense, I felt like a little kid, at the same time not, and just like this odd being of energy in a distorted universe. I remember my friends looked way bigger than they normally did, the trees in his backyard towered over dark, but those streetlights, I remember really had this glowing aura to them that the trip felt attracted to. And I don't mean to sound redundant about this stuff, but really words don't do justice to this feeling of euphoria and empathy throughout all this. It was really encompassing and healing. Again, in an odd dissociative trippy manner. But let's not make this story too long. So moving along, we hang out there for a good half hour or so. It was a good ass vibe, and I looked like I even smoked, but I was just so damn dissociated. But as time went on, I remember at some point, I think the group split up. I really don't remember exactly what happened. I think Leo was trying to hook up with Jody on the low key, because that was just something me and him talked about before. But really, I have no clue when Leo dipped out or when the girls went to hang by themselves. Basically at some point, I ended up by myself in the living room for a little bit, which I was cool with because I had brought over some headphones, so I could really just get lost into some euphoria. It was a good ass time just listening, but Marcel eventually did come back around. It was like 2 in the morning or something like that, maybe 3. I was still dissociated as fuck, and Marcel couldn't believe it, but he was still pretty stoned himself. And I did have a robo walk at this point, really strong. I had noticed it ever since we had gone outside, as I really didn't want to sit down and just experience it. There was a fun quality to it, and it wasn't like I couldn't walk, but it really just threw my walking off in this weird way. Basically it was like I was stomping around, almost like this dance. And with the music we had, just the highness we experienced, Marcel and I turned it into this funny ass tribal dance, doing like these chants and all this with it. And this really just excelled those feelings of being part of a tribe, being part of the gang, and where I'm supposed to be. It was such a time to be alive, I feel like, for us. Just a great ass night. And I did tell Marcel the possibility of an entity being present this night, guiding me in this way, healing me in this way, communicating to me in this way. And I know a part of that communication actually has led me to what I'm doing now with this channel. This night would heavily influence my inspiration heavily in my interest and my drive in psychonautics, of what can be experienced and what is possible. Again, I didn't see an embodiment of any sort, but it was almost like I was the embodiment. It was encompassed internally within me, but also all around me, lying within the deep crevices of the universe at all times. It's such an odd, difficult thing to describe. It's simply incredible. Eventually though, I think Marcel passed out on the couch or something, and I just went on my phone for a good rest of the night, really mostly doing research on DXM and the various experiences out there, specifically in relation to there being an entity present, if anyone had an encounter with Dexter like I had. To put it shortly, at least at the time I researched it, I got varied results, none of which really tied in the name of Dexter. But I made a good handful of posts throughout the night, as the DXM kept me awake. I wouldn't go to sleep until later on when I got home. But I just lay down on Marcel's bed for this, and just really felt like I was closed off from everything else going on in the world, but at the same time I wasn't. Just in a different way, being connected to the digital world. And some effects would transfer to my phone though. This is especially true when coming up. I tried to text my mom, and I just couldn't, and gave up because I couldn't move my fingers in a way I always did when I texted. It was literally just too difficult. Like my brain literally wasn't wired that way anymore, and it's supposed to go the opposite direction. Typing was probably the biggest difficulty, but then reading could easily be too at times. There could be some double vision and distortions. Combined with your slow dissociated state of mind, this can be really difficult. Closing one eye though can help with this. But outside of this, I don't really feel like there's really too much more I want to add to this story. I stayed up the whole night dissociated, but healing and doing better than I had been before. It was an eye-opening experience, better than the MDMA and LSA experience in a lot of ways, which that was the most previous story before this one chronologically. With that, I moved on to the next thing awaiting in my life, which I'll just say now, I think we have 1 or 2 more stories before we officially move into the second chapter in my story of psychonautics. It's been a long time coming, and this experience here was a nice healing supportive trip that I just needed at the time. And it's something that would happen more as life moved on. You'll just see. But anyways, let me know if you've had an experience like this, if you experienced some type of entity, or even these kinds of feelings. Would love to hear from you guys, and besides that, you already know, like and subscribe. I got some more stuff cooking guys, just stay tuned. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.